Okay, so now we started discussing already about the Yom Tov itself. Okay, the first night first really 2 nights of Pesach, of Sukkot outside of Eretz Yisrael, there's the first night, it's a biblical obligation to eat in the Sukkah, even if it's pouring. You have to eat in the Sukkah, which California usually doesn't have that problem. The second night is also an obligation to eat at least a kazayas in the Sukkah. Now, generally speaking, it's halachically preferred not to eat anything or drink anything whatsoever, even water outside of a sukkah. That's what is mentioned in halacha. That's the preferred way. But what obligates a person to eat in the sukkah? Because the difference, I'll tell you what is as follows. If you question when can I make a leishiv basukah, when we eat in the sukkah, not every time you eat in the sukkah are you able to make a leishiv basukah. Because the only time you eat in the sukkah, when you make a bracha leishiv basukah, is when you have a mitzvah to eat in the sukkah. But if you don't have a mitzvah to eat in the sukkah, so then you can't make a leishiv basukah. You can't say a bracha shekichan b'mitzvah v'tzvon that Hashem commanded us. So besides the first 2 nights, when is a person obligated? For what must you go into the sukkah to eat, and therefore you can make a leishiv basukah? So basically, it's 2 ounces of bread, or 2 ounces of something which is mezainis, cake, basically, or noodles or something like that. That would be a mezainis. So, what? No, the wine party is only if it's a party, and that's not so simple in halacha. But no, most people don't do that. We'll leave it at that. You're an exception, I know. So, Matthew. So now the question is like this. So technically, a guy can have a full meal, a 5-course meal. They can have fish and salad, and they can have soup, and they can have prime rib with potatoes and other vegetables, and you're hungry already, good. And you can have all those foods plus a dessert of ice cream, and you don't make a leishiv basukah, because none of these things are either 2 ounces of bread or cake. So therefore you cannot make a leishiv basukah. Ideally you're supposed to sit in the sukkah, but you can't make a leishiv basukah because you're not technically obligated to eat in the sukkah. What happens if a person has cake or bread? So you have to be careful. In order to make a leishiv basukah, you cannot make it on 1 kazayas, which is 1 ounce of bread. You have to have at least 2 ounces of bread or 2 ounces of cake to be able to make the bracha leishiv basukah. So therefore, like this, what happens? Another practical din. What happens? Let's say you ate breakfast in your house at 8 o'clock in the morning. You ate and you washed. You had a proper breakfast. And now you're coming home for lunch at 1 o'clock. Now when you left the house after eating in the sukkah at 8 o'clock, you knew you were going to come back for lunch, let's say. So then the din is like this. If you leave the sukkah and you come back within 2 hours, and you knew you were coming back, you do not make a leishiv basukah again, because the first leishiv basukah covers it. What happens though if it's more than 2 hours? So then you need to make a new leishiv basukah. So therefore, if I finished eating at 8, and now I know I'm coming back at 12, but the fact is I know I'm coming back, it was already 4 hours, so then you have to make a new leishiv basukah. What happens? Your questions are too complicated for me, I told you that. I just don't know the answer to your questions. Now what happens if somebody finishes eating? This could also happen. You finish eating, okay? You left the sukkah. So you finish, you ate dinner, you washed it, whatever, you made a leishiv basukah, and now you're leaving the sukkah, you left the sukkah. All of a sudden, a minute later, a friend comes and says, hey, let's go have a farbrengen. So now you're going to bring out cake and other stuff. So then the din is, even if it's 5 minutes later, you have to make a new leishiv basukah. Why? Because when you left the sukkah, you didn't plan to come back. If you didn't plan to come back, so then your first leishiv basukah is over, because your intent was that's over. If you know you're coming back and you're coming back within 2 hours. So then the bottom line is you know that you're coming back. You never removed your mind from Leisha Basukkah.
Isn't it better to say more?
No, you can't, but it's a bracha in vain. If you
never had intention that you're going to come back.
Never think, in other words. It's very good. A lot of people don't think. One second, but let me just say another thing. What happens though if I'm going sukkah hopping? You know, I'm going to pay a whole bunch of friends. I'm going to bring the visit in the sukkah. So then, the din is every sukkah, if you eat enough, you have to make a new leisha basukkah. You know, let's say I have 2 ounces of cake in my sukkah. I make a leisha basukkah, I eat 2 ounces of cake, and I know right afterwards I'm going to your sukkah. And then I know I'm going to another sukkah. The fact that it's a different sukkah, that demands a new leisha basukkah. Huh?
It's a lot of ounces of cake.
I understand. What?
You're like in a windy area, and then you're in the middle of eating the sukkah, your stock falls and you put it back up.
You don't have to make, it's still the same sukkah. You don't have to make the new, but yeah.
If you know the sukkah is not kosher, do you still have to say
No, if the sukkah is not kosher and you make a leisha basukkah, you did a bracha in vain.
So you don't say
no.
So just,
you can't make a bracha leisha basukkah in a non-kosher. So can you make a bracha if you know the tefillin are not kosher? Can you make a bracha on them? You can't.
Right.
You can't make a bracha because not only you're doing an aveda, you're making a terrible bracha in vain, which is even worse. What? What? Mezainis and bread. Now, if you're kaveh on wine, if you're kaviyas, can make a party on not kaviyas of wine. Marshal, the Rebbe's opinion is, and that's it's a big argument in halacha, but the Rebbe holds, let's say you go make havdalah in the sukkah, then you have to make a leisha basukkah. Why? Because that mitzvah makes the wine important. In halacha it says, if somebody's keveya a suda on wine, in other words, they're sitting down to drink wine, which is questionable in halacha exactly what that means. But if they're sitting down to have a wine, you know, they're going to be spending a while in the sukkah, and they're going to be having it. So then you have to make a leisha b'sukkah. So the Rebbe holds that by havdalah, havdalah, because it's a mitzvah, it makes it important, it makes it a kviyas establishment, and therefore you have to make a leisha b'sukkah even by havdalah.
What if you're having a suda yomtiv without mezainis and without wine? That mitzvah.
Then it's not a suda yomtiv.
Even if you're having
a suda yomtiv al pi din is when you have yomtiv, you have to wash. In fact.
So it's not a suda yomtiv if you have
no.
Does the hamancy apply if you're wherever you don't have to make the shed b'sukkah? Do you need to bench and washing it, or you can go 2 hours without benching and washing?
The best thing is you wash your bench right away, because otherwise you're going to call up a Rav 5 hours later, I forgot to bench. That's what happens.
But does it apply the same, like wherever the shed b'sukkah applies?
No.
When would you make the shed b'sukkah for about?
When you say Baruch Atah Hashem Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'Chol, before you drink, you say Shekachon Mitzvahs Fana Leisha B'Sukkah.
It's not Hesed?
No, it's just like by Kiddush. When you make Kiddush on Yom Tiv, you also make it right after Kiddush before you drink. Now what happens if somebody is eating in the sukkah, okay, something like cake or bread or whatever, and you're supposed to make a leisha b'sukkah, but then you forgot. You're eating in the middle of the meal, you realized, oh, I didn't make a leisha b'sukkah. So the din is, as long as you're still sitting in the sukkah, you need to make the bracha leisha b'sukkah. The halacha is even if you finished eating already. You finished eating, you finished the meal. You did Birchat HaMazon, you benched or Alamichi, whatever, and then you realize, oh, I didn't say leisha b'sukkah. The halacha is, as long as you're still sitting in the sukkah, you still make a leisha b'sukkah. So what you do is, you can't just run out, make a leisha b'sukkah, right? You're supposed to stay a few minutes afterwards, because even sitting in the sukkah technically is a mitzvah, but it's not enough of a mitzvah which would demand the bracha. But because you ate bread and cake and things that you had to make a leisha b'sukkah, so as long as you're still sitting in the sukkah, you can make a leisha b'sukkah. What happens if you left already? You went back into the house, you finished eating, you went back into the house, and then you realized you didn't make a Shabbat Sukkah. You blew it. What?
What if you're gonna study in the sukkah?
Ideally, but you don't make a bracha on that. Ideally, it says in halacha, you're supposed to live in the sukkah like you live in your house. If you're able to daven, let's say you're davening at home without a minyan, technically you should daven in the sukkah. If you're learning, you should learn in the sukkah. It says in halacha, but if you're able to concentrate better at home in the house, because let's say in the sukkah is freezing or too hot, or it depends where you live, east or west, so then you don't have to sit in the sukkah. Now in Shulchan Aruch it speaks about sleeping in the sukkah. Now Chabad doesn't sleep in the sukkah. It's funny. We won't drink water outside of a sukkah even if it's pouring rain. Even if it's pouring rain. But we dafka don't sleep in the sukkah. It has to do with Kabbalistically, the Mittel Rebbe, the second Chabad Rebbe said, based on the Zohar, that the sukkah is what's called makifim de bina. It's a very lofty level of kedusha. It's a very, very lofty level. It's makifim of bina. So he said, how can you sleep in makifim de bina? So how can you sleep in such a holy place? So even if you don't feel, B'chal generally in Shulchan Aruch, the Rebbe also brings down that nowadays people are more lenient in sleeping because it's cold. And other places, the Rebbe also brings down you have to make your wife happy. If you're going to be, she's going to be in the house and you're going to be in the sukkah. She's not going to be very excited about that. So the world is makeable. But in Chabad, we dafke don't sleep in the sukkah.
Are you supposed to do only religious thing in the sukkah?
Yeah, you're only supposed to do religious things. You shouldn't bring in garbage cans. We discussed that.
No, I know that. How about answering the email?
No, you could do it like you do in the house. Yeah, if somebody can function in the sukkah, they should. It says in halacha, you're supposed to go function. No, you shouldn't play poker or gambling for cards. But you shouldn't play that in the house either.
We can.
Okay, but that's a separate issue. What?
How can it be a mitzvah to sleep in the sukkah if you can't?
If what?
If there's makif de bina and you're not supposed to sleep in it.
There's halacha and there's Kabbalah. Mitzvah halacha, you have to sleep in it. And the contrary, sleeping, even a nap, you're not allowed to sleep outside of a sukkah. Temporary eating, we learned halachically you can eat outside of a sukkah, like a snack, right? But sleeping, it says, shh, even shina sa'ari, even a temporary sleep, you're not, why? Because you fall asleep, it might be for the night. You know, people fall asleep and take a nap. You know, they want to stay up at night, so they take a 10-minute nap and ends up to wake up in the morning. So then, sleeping, you don't sleep in this. So we don't. Then even that, just temporary sleeping, and I'll sleep in the sukkah. What?
So it's more than 2 hours making bracha. How is
To me, it depends. There's a whole thing. Okay, the hour, 2 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours. There's a difference between tefillin and sukkah, and Avraham Chaim Noah says he doesn't understand the difference, and the Rebbe writes exactly what the beard is, because the suda is normally 1 hour. So sometimes you have Ma'arichim b'suda, so it's up to 2 hours. By davening, you have an hour and a half davening. So if you're Ma'arich, it's over 2 hours. So then it's 2 to 3, or that's the way the Rebbe learns. But again, you know, whatever, yeah.
How long do you have after Sukkah to take down your Sukkah? 30 days before the next?
My sukkah is still up the last 7 years. Probably maybe more. Yeah, I mean, you can leave it up.
Can't it not be like that?
Huh?
Don't you have to take it?
You have to live the spot.
Can't you not build this 30 days before Sukkah or something?
No. If you're building it for the Yachag, you could build it from the beginning of the year.
Can I come in? Wait
If you're building it for a sukkah, for the mitzvah, if you're building it a hut, not for a mitzvah, just, you know, so then it has to be within 30 days. But if you're building it for a sukkah, even more than 30 days before is good. The only question you have to do, if it's a year old, you have to do anything new to the sukkah, that's, you know, different things.
But if you're not taking it down, doesn't that make it a permanent?
No. What?
Someone's doing a bris, but they're not going to wash after. Do they say they shouldn't sukkah because it's on a mitzvah?
A bris? There's no mitzvah to do a bris. You don't do a bris in the sukkah.
No, there's a case. You don't do a bris in the sukkah?
Generally, it depends. If it's freezing outside, you're not going to do a bris in the
Make a
sukkah.
bris, California, yeah, big sukkah.
Some people, in the chatchila, you can make a bris in the sukkah. But again, if you're not going to be washing for the meal, you don't make a lisha
But
b'sukkah.
isn't the place now chashuv because it's on a mitzvah?
But you don't. How much of it do you drink?
What do you want? You make a brach on it, I guess.
Govern. That's it. You don't make an after bracha. So it's not It's not even a revius.
If you're having a revius, you can't.
It's still not because the wine is not mitzvah the mitzvah. It's havdalah. The mitzvah is on a cup of wine. Bris milah is not on the cup of wine. You have if somebody does a bris milah and there's no wine, you still did a bris. Havdalah, you need wine, so the wine is a part of the mitzvah by a bris. The wine is not actually part of the mitzvah.
Why after Yom Kippur you get the pre-existing place of alcohol?
Okay, we're learning now sukkahs.